This is episode number 26 of the Nourish Life show, and because we've got Elliott Hulse on the show today, I'm going to kick off with one of his quotes, which is, growing stronger is about accumulating wisdom, learning from your mistakes, and inspiring others to become the strongest version of themselves.
This is the Nourish Life show. Break the mold and live a nourished life with Simon Hall.
So, have we got an absolute powerhouse of an episode and guest lined up for you today? So, as always, if you are tuning in, A, let us know where you're tuning in from. B, let us know what you take away from the episode. And C, if it can go out and help someone or there's information on here which someone else would value, please share the episode or tag them in. Now, on to today's review of the episode. This is from Alex over in New Zealand, who's saying, if you want real, honest, down-to-earth advice and knowledge and some amazing, inspiring guests who will help you become a better version of yourself in every area of your life, this show is for you. It's a great listen, and I can't wait for more to come. So, Alex, amazing. Really appreciate the review there. And if you want to get a special mention or feature on any of the shows, just simply pop us a review and a star rating. So on to today's guest. With me on the show today, I'm extremely excited and pumped to tell you that we've got Elliott Hulse on the show. Now, this man for me has been a huge inspiration from my early doors days in the fitness industry as a young personal trainer around the age of 18. Through to watching this man's videos just progress and blow up online. He's now helping people all over the world become the strongest versions of themselves through his grounding camps, through speaking gigs, through his coaching, and also through his books, as well as much more. So with me today on the show, it is Elliott Hulse.
Take a screenshot, tag in at Simon Hall BC, and let us know you're listening on socials. Nourish Life.
Things are amazing. Thank you. My pleasure.
Anyway, so the big thing first before I jump into this is I just want to say a big thank you, because when I first started off in the fitness career, back in the personal training days, it was your videos that genuinely opened up so much to me personally and a lot of my other colleagues at the time. And this was when you were first getting going. I think we started watching them very early doors. And to see what you've done in that space and to this day is absolutely phenomenal. So just to give a bit of context to you personally, I'd love to know a little bit more about you. Like, how did this all start for you, from going from bodybuilder to YouTube sensation all the way through to strongman to yogi? How's your journey panned out?
Well, I was blessed to be born with very good genetics and very health and fitness oriented parents. In particular, my uncle, who lived with us when I was young, and so when I was 4 years old, he was teaching me martial arts and how to do push-ups and stuff. So my self-esteem around fitness and strength was very strong. I was much stronger and faster than a lot of other kids. Never a very good student. So when phys ed time came about, that's when I when I really shined. When I was in high school, my uncle became a bodybuilder and taught me how to start lifting weights. And so I, again, really built my identity around football, but I really looked forward to the off season so that I could lift weights also too. And so I knew that I wanted to make a career out of it. When I graduated from college, where I had a football scholarship, I took several personal training jobs, and then when I started growing a family, I knew I wanted to own my own business, and so I started my own. I was training people at local gyms, but ultimately I ended up training people in the parks way before boot camps was a thing, and way before strongman was a thing. It's amazing to see how those have evolved since the days I started. I was really one of the first people doing strongman on social media, and also doing boot camps, training people. And so I used to record the workouts that I was doing with the guys in the park on YouTube when YouTube first came about back in like 2007. And that kind of snowballed. People enjoyed the videos that I was making. I was doing them mainly so that I can get more local clients, but little did I know that people worldwide would be watching and that they'd be enjoying the things that I had to talk about. So here I am.
Yeah, I was going to say that blew up extremely quick. And
right.
Obviously, the thing that I love about you is how you turned it from social media, but you created a huge business around it. And it's now something that's it's international. It's grown in so many areas. What would you say the biggest struggles for you have been? So in your career and doing what you've done, what's been the biggest struggles for you personally?
I'd say over these past few years, like you said, I went into business first and then social media came about. And social media exposed me to the world, and the world liked what they saw, and I very quickly rose to having millions of subscribers. And the biggest challenge for me has been humility. I quite frankly didn't know how to handle it. And, with everybody falling in love with me so quickly, I fell in love with myself maybe a little too much. And, they say pride before the fall. So, my big challenge and growth has come from really God humbling me through injuries and a few other struggles that I've had in these past 5 years where I've really been worked on, so that now I can come back to the world with all of the strength and power that I've always had, but with far more groundedness.
I was going to say that's one of the biggest things that I've seen, and I absolutely love in the work that you're putting out, is how it's now starting to come into that grounding sense more from the energetic side and the spiritual side, and that's really showing. For me, what kind of constituted to that change where it went from being like very bodybuilder, strongman orientated to moving more towards opening up around the mind, spiritual side?
Well, I've always been very spiritual, and I had been called by God since I was very young. And so when I was making the YouTube videos and I rose in popularity, that sort of started going away. And I didn't feel like I needed God any longer. I didn't need spirituality any longer. I was making money and people loved me, and I got swept up in that until, like I said, God started working on me. And when you got a big, strong, attractive body and you know yourself through fitness, the way you get a guy like that is to start tearing his body apart. And so I began injuring myself. I tore both biceps. I was a professional strongman, and that ended my career. And then I ended up tearing my Achilles tendon. And so after a slew of injuries, I was forced to look beyond my flesh and come back home. And one of my favorite quotes that I learned from Iron John, a book written by Robert Bly about men, is that every wound is a womb. And so every injury to me was an opportunity to confront myself and literally die and be reborn.
So would you say it was a case of just finding out again who you were and then starting that processes of rebuilding Elliott, so to speak?
Correct.
With a lot of people who are struggling and don't necessarily know where to go to start rebuilding, what key tips would you give to people to help that?
Rebuilding oneself, the only way that can happen is to be broken down first. And you can either choose to let yourself down, in other words, step down, and that looks different for everyone, but really disidentification with our personality, disidentification with our hopes, fears, dreams, ambitions, subtle addictions, which we all have, and I'm learning more and more about. And that's really the process of humbling oneself and coming back down to earth and grounding oneself, so that the truth can be revealed. If we're so filled up and we know so much, or we're so smart, God doesn't have space to fill you with anything new. And so there's no room for growth there. There literally has to be a death to oneself so that life can be found.
How would you say that presented itself in you? Was it through the injuries?
Correct.
With the amount of people who you're working with at the minute, because obviously it's on a global level, what would you say the biggest thing you see in the majority of people is who you work with?
I've always worked majority with men, and I was blessed to be able to help so many young boys become men through the iron, through lifting. It was very instrumental in me in my maturity and my self-knowing. And when I started training young athletes, I saw the same thing in them, and that's where I began. Today, I'm called to support men in a much broader context, and one of the biggest struggles I'm seeing now is the actual embrace of one's own masculinity in a world that's become so feminized.
This is something that I really wanted to dig in with you because your work on this topic absolutely fascinates me. I'd love to know, where do you feel that it's gone wrong, like the masculine energy?
Well, it's multiple different levels, and it's been happening over a long time. I'd start right with the body, and it's very evident, and we do know that we're being manipulated hormonally. It's in our food, it's in our water, it's in our air. I recently just learned that birth control pills that women take, among many things that they do, is they poison and feminize men, because the hormones are released into our drinking water through a woman's urine. And although we're able to cleanse the water to a degree, they can't get those hormones out. So if you're drinking water, you're, in many instances, depending on where you live, you're taking in female hormones. All the plastics in our food and in our water and in our environment. So we're being feminized on a biological level. I actually just heard today, I was in a meeting with some of my guys, and they were talking about how mercury creates sexual confusion, and science is now showing us that mercury is in our in the vaccines that they give us. I grew up getting mercury fillings in my mouth. I had them all removed. There's mercury in our food because of the pesticides, the Roundup in particular that they use. I'm talking physiological, but also psychologically. Our media and our education system is designed and is clearly feminizing us, teaching us wrong morals and destroying our values. They want to destroy the home. And so one of the things that we see is the decline in the being fathers in the home, particularly here in America with the African American community. Men are also demonized in the media, either looked upon as tyrants or fools. And you see it, and not only that, but also now being encouraged to take on very beta female characteristics. Everything from Homer Simpson being a buffoon. You could look at it flippantly, like I did for very long, just kind of ignored it and was like, oh, what's the big deal, to each their own. But it's social engineering. They're trying to turn us into women and turning men into women into men and men into women. It's evident in a myriad of aspects of our society, but if you just look at what's happening in the home, most men don't know how to be good husbands and fathers. Doesn't mean that they're deadbeats or that they're not there, but even as far as men being the leaders in the home, which has been traditional, is no longer the case. I look at a lot of young men and they say put the pussy on the pedestal, but what we're finding is that they look to their women for leadership. They look to their wives for leadership. They say ridiculous things like happy wife, happy life. And they kind of behave like one of the children in the home rather than being the strong masculine leader that women crave, women want, regardless of what they say. And that is our natural rightful place in the most basic unit, which is the home.
I love the fact you just said that. I've just come back. I've been on a work retreat and I ended up going over with a close friend of mine, and she's one of the UK's leading sex coaches. And we were talking about the sexual energies and what's actually going on. And she was saying one of the biggest problems that she's having, or what she's seeing, is that at first the male is portraying a strong male, but then when it starts getting into the relationship, it's starting to submiss and the sexual energies are starting to change. And it's amazing that you're saying that. With regards to that, where would you say, how would you say we need to go around helping that or fixing that? Or
Well, one of the things that our ancestors understood was that to be a man wasn't something that came naturally. When a boy and a girl are both born, they both come from the same mother, and they're very much attached to the mother, and the mother is the feminine counterpart. So when a boy is a boy, it's okay for him to be attached to the mother, to be a mama's boy. But when the testosterone starts to rise in his body, he's becoming a man. Our ancestors understood that it was important for the elders to remove the boy from the home, create separation from him and his mother, an world of the father. And this is the term that I learned also from Iron John, and it's been a cross-cultural understanding throughout, when I say cross-cultural, throughout all cultures, where there was an initiation process, where a young man would be removed from the home, would be removed from his mother, taken out into the world with the older men, separating himself from society, and being not only broken down, like I told you about humility, and they would do it through various rites of passage, fasting and different physical challenges. But before going back into society, before going back and being reintegrated, they were given meaning, they were given purpose, they were given dignity and a lineage. And it had everything to do with not only looking to the father, their biological father, and the men in the society, in their tribe, but also to the eternal Father and to God the Father. And that is as simple as, and can be seen in movies like The Lion King, where Simba loses his father and he ends up in the wilderness. And while he's lost, he's also found by an elder, who's the old monkey who takes him up to the mountain and shows him the sky. He says, yeah, look up, and when you look up, that's what it is that men do. We look up. And he showed him all the ancestors. He showed him his father and his father's father and his great-great-grandfather and all the fathers that were there before him, to let him know that he's got a responsibility.
Is it a lack of leadership, do you reckon, that's there? Or a lack of role models for people to look up to and see? Or
no, there are leaders and there are role models, but they're the wrong ones. When we look to government, we look to media, we look to celebrities to tell us how to be, we end up just following their lead. And so if celebrity men are wearing dresses, well, don't be surprised if you start seeing it as something cool and new. And so the social engineering it comes through leadership, but it's the wrong leadership.
I get that. So for you then, Elliot, what does your definition, what would you say like alpha is and beta is? What does that mean to you?
Well, simply put, to be an alpha is to be a man, and to be beta is to take on your mother's spirit. And so one of the first things that you'll notice about a beta male is that he's very emotional. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's a crybaby, but even quick to anger, very violent. That kind of ungrounded, angry violence is beta male-esque. On the corollary, as far as being a man and understanding our place and the role of the heart and the role of emotion, it is right for men to distance themselves or to put the emotions in the right place, so that we're not manipulated by our primacy, our which is our feminine nature, our material nature, our mother's nature, and to transcend that and to lead with a spiritual, rational character instead. That is something that doesn't come naturally. It's something that needs to be taught and shown.
Where would you start with that? So in your experience, because you've worked with so many men all over the world and on different platforms, where would you start with someone who, because we're seeing it a lot in the UK, and I've had quite a lot of males reach out and coaching clients and stuff like that, who genuinely just, I'm lost, I don't know my role. Where would you necessarily say building that person back up you'd start with?
The very first step is separation. Like I said, our ancestors understood there needed to be a separation from the world of the mother. Not the mother herself, well, definitely the mother, but also a separation from civilization and all of the feminizing aspects of civilization. And when I say that, the word mother comes from the word matter. The word father comes from the word pattern. And anything that is associated with matter is deeply felt and is associated with safety and security, our most base and primal instincts. So what really needs to happen is men need to go their own way for a time. I don't think that, there's this big movement, and I think it's justified, called MGTOW, where men are going their own way. And I think it's a justified backlash to this overemphasis on the material. Money, hoes, and clothes, they say. The rap guys would say money, hoes, and clothes. Like, that's all the nigga knows. That's how the rap song goes. Well, that's knowing everything about the world of the mother. So what really needs for a man to really come into his own, that separation, that clean slate needs to happen. And so putting away the neediness for mommy, which shows up in our promiscuity and our easy falling in love and our neediness for women. And I've been married since I was 14 years old, so I know a lot about this.
Yeah.
And where I was steered wrong, but my life has turned out well. Separating oneself so that, like I said earlier, when that vessel is cleansed and purified from dependence on consumption. Consumption is also very feminine. We overeat in our society. Fasting is a very masculine thing, and I think we need to begin fasting. So MGTOW, meaning going your own way and separating from women and the neediness for women, periods of fasting, and then periods of humility and opening oneself up to God the Father through prayer and meditation. So that's just the beginning. That's cleaning the slate. That's separating oneself, cleaning one's slate, so that meaning can emerge in one's life. That can emerge with a connection to the pattern. Like I said, father is pattern, and pattern is also where we get the word archetype from, which is the godly, the spiritual realm. But also from other men. I think men need other men. One of the things I'm seeing a lot are young men who have a hard time relating to other men. And that's men know each other through relationship with other men. When all of our relationships are feminized or with the feminine, well, we get what we have now, which is a bunch of feminine boys.
With the work that you do at Current, what's the biggest thing for you? What do you see the most, or what really lights you up about it? Like, is it seeing that full transcendence and that the transformation through? What's the biggest thing that you get from changing these people's lives?
Well, what I get from it is fulfilling my role and why I've been put here. This is my calling. And so I'm delighted to step into that role. Like I said, I've been worked on these past several years, healing some wrong thoughts and ways about myself, so that I could step into my true role. And now that I'm able to, I'm much stronger and able to handle the criticism that comes with it in a world that hates men. And I delight in much of the criticism I've been getting lately because of my masculine stance, particularly from men. They don't like it, and I think it's because I'm holding up a mirror to them, and it's triggering things in them, and I'm okay with that. So even if I'm hated because of it, that's okay. I'm here to do my job, which is to lead men that want to be led.
I want to just touch up on something. You mentioned there, heal. What's the biggest thing you personally have had to heal?
Well, one of the things I like to say is that the body is the mind. And I'm very convinced that that's the case. So physical wounds are also wounds of the soul, I'm sorry.
I love that.
And so, if you are familiar with the chakra system, the heart chakra is associated with the cardiac plexus. And the cardiac plexus and the cardiac pericardium are all innervated by the or innervate the arms, the heart, the chest, and the majority of my wounds and healing physically. Sorry about the helicopters. It's been happening a lot lately these days. I don't know if we're preparing for something, but military helicopters everywhere. My solar plexus. I've had a tremendous amount of tension and pain in my solar plexus and heart these years. And also, like I said, tearing both biceps is evident that, there was some heart healing that I needed. And so heart wounds are associated with the lover aspect of what it means to be a fully integrated man. And wounds of the heart often show up in misdealings with the feminine. and also addiction. And so, I found myself, and I mentioned earlier, subtle addictions, and I didn't realize how many addictions and subtle addictions I had.
I've seen you speak a lot about the 4 layers of strength. Could you explain what those 4 are?
Yeah, once this helicopter stops circling me. It's all right. It's all perfect. I'm used to being silenced. At least they try.
I was going to say we've never had a podcast where it's been outside, so it's kind of fun, like having to deal with the elements on it. So
here he comes again, and I'll begin when he passes. So I'll begin with this number 4, because this number 4 has been like a guidepost for me. I'd like to say it's my spirit number. I'm the oldest of 4 children. I'm the oldest son of 4 children. I was born in the 4th month. I have 4 children. Everywhere I look, this quadrated symbol, even the square and its stability shows up in my life. And it was no wonder that when I began speaking about becoming the strongest version of oneself physically, I spoke about it in 4 layers. And I would talk about, the first and most superficial layer that most men came to me for, which was for the body. You want to be stronger physically. I spoke at length about that in my YouTube videos, but then a layer deeper than that is physiologically what's happening to us and how we relate to the world physiologically, our hormones, our organs, even the nervous system, which starts going a little bit deeper into what I called energetic strength, which is more of our mind, nervous system, and then life mastery strength, which really is transcendent. It's about God's spirituality and our generative nature as men, kings, that live for more than just ourselves.
That's what I love. I love about in your book, The King. You've how they relate to the archetypes as well, which I absolutely love in that. Big strong recommendation there that people should read that as well if they're interested in this area. Now, there's one thing. I saw something you made a statement on a recent podcast I actually heard you on. It was about breathing into your balls. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? Explain that.
Well, once again, if the body is the mind that we want, then we want to use the body in its most natural way. Use the body the way it's meant to be used. And our very first movement is breathing, is the breathing mechanism. And so everything in the universe pulsates. Everything, from our hearts to every cell, the entire universe is pulsating like this. And so our respiration, our ability to breathe, is our primary pump. And it is deeply tied to our spiritual nature. That's why, the word spirit comes from the word breath, to inspire. And it is also deeply tied to our carnal nature, our physical nature. And so when we're so deeply identified with our material world, we take on the traumas associated with the world, and it interrupts our ability. It interrupts our primal pulsation, which is breathing. And so when I say breathe into your balls, all I'm talking about is the deep, rhythmical, fluid flow of a natural breath, which almost none of us actually possess. And because breathing is a physical mechanism, that trauma shows up physically in our posture and in what I like to call neurotic holding patterns, tensions in our head, in our jaw, in our throat, in our chest, our solar plexus, our belly, our pelvic floor. And when I talk about breathing into your balls, I'm talking about breathing into the pelvic floor, breathing deep down physically into our pelvic floor.
That's awesome. Do you do any specific form of breathing exercises or anything like that?
Yes, I teach various breathing exercises that I learned in my time with Dr. Bob Glazier, who was a bioenergetic analyst. And so there are a myriad of methods for reducing and purging the physical holding patterns in the body. As a strength coach, things that are as simple as using a foam roller and correcting postural distortions. But that only again works on one. So we literally have to practice deep breathing exercises.
Yeah. Is there any practices that you personally use every day? Like, do you have a set of non-negotiables or a routine? Because for me, like, the reason that I love having you on the show is because you're moving so many things forwards and growing them, such as life, business, your own health, family, your contribution back to the world. And for someone to be delivering to the extent that you are, you've always got to be performing at your best. Do you have like a set of non-negotiables or routines that you do on the daily to ensure that you can deliver on all of those areas at the best that you can?
So, of course, there are physical exercises, and I could talk about those, but I would like to actually talk about something that has been reignited in my life, something I've known about for over 15 years, and that is fasting. And I began my first fast when I was 23 years old, and it revolutionized my life. I did it for spiritual gain, and although my body did change, so did my character, and my life was set off on a brand new trajectory. But over time, I let go of that, and I got hypnotized by the world, and I thought I needed to have all kinds of muscle, and I needed to eat all the time, and I put it away until very recently. Although God has been calling me to fast once again, it hasn't been until recently that I began to actually see its physical, physiological, energetic, and transcendent power in my life. And so, when I talk about being able to reduce and calm the muscular holding patterns and to heal ourselves physiologically, of course, deep breathing and exercises are important, and they work on those first three layers of strength. But fasting literally changes the muscular system, changes the physiology, changes the brain, and also our great teachers of old have always urged us to fast. And so now, I'm taking it on, as I always do, as my own experience, my own practice before I go out and evangelize. Yeah. But I recommend that before going on any process of self-growth, one must purge oneself through fasting. And I'm not talking about the trendy, intermittent 18 or 16-8 fasting. I'm talking about extended, prolonged fasting, going multiple days fasting.
What's the longest you've done? I know Tom Bilyeu has just done something. I was watching his Instagram feed. He's just gone on like a lengthy, I think he did it for like 4 days to a week or something. What would you usually do? What would be your time durations?
Yeah, I've done 4-day fast, 5-day fast, and tomorrow actually begins my fasting season that I began doing, like I said, back when I was in 2002, and that's a full month of fasting. And I've left it open to be an open-ended fast, and I'm opening myself up to receive from God when I'm to end that fast. So if it goes 20 days or 40 days, wow, I'm willing to do that.
How have you found that? Because obviously coming from the bodybuilder to the strongman through to, because you're doing a lot of yoga now, movement-based and fasting. How have you found that aspect? Has it been quite easy for you to break the eating patterns? Well,
I had to be ready. And like I said, I had to break myself down, and I had to break myself to my addiction to being a big, strong, muscular power lifter and strongman. So more than anything, it really required my ego to take a back seat, and I'm finally ready for that. Like I said, I haven't done a prolonged fast in this spiritual way that I'm describing, and I'll only be starting tomorrow. So I can't tell you what what that's like. But for the first time in my life, I'm ready to sacrifice that. I don't even want to call it a sacrifice, but to open myself up to receive the blessings that are available through that.
I can't wait to watch how that goes. A lot of teaching on how people can become the strongest version of themselves. For you, if you were to be able to give a tip to all of our listeners, to all the people that watch, what would you say would be the biggest power tip you'd give for becoming the strongest version of yourself?
Once again, the body is the mind, and we've got to start with the body. You can read as many books, take as many courses, deliberate and philosophize as much as you want, but unless it's put into practical action, it's of no value. And the way men know ourselves is through action and practical action. And so if you're wanting to be the strongest version of yourself, you can't be fat. I'll put it that simply. Get lean, get fit, stop eating shit, and begin exercising.
And Elliott, if there was a phone line which every single male on the planet could pick up and get this one message from you, what would you say? What would you give every single male if you could give one message through to the world?
I think it would be along the same lines of we've got to go back to the principle of separation from the world of the mother and atonement with the world of the father. It begins with the emptying ourselves. And so the first place to begin is to stop the consumption. All of our diseases in this day are diseases of consumption, be them depression or anxiety or any neurological disease or disease of the body. And so the way that starts is when you stop. So stopping with the subtle addiction of food. I mean, that right there will open you, as it did to me, to all the other addictions like sex, which it was absolutely a physical addiction and is very much a trap for all men, as well as our addiction to needing approval from others, especially those who are lost. It's like the blind leading the blind, and we're looking to blind people to tell us how to be. Addiction to entertainment, media, this addiction to ecstasy. This is why we drink so much alcohol and are addicted to drugs. It's because we're addicted to feeling good. Our ancestors always took up a practice of asceticism, and that means ridding oneself of the need to always feel good. They would do. I'm not saying that we do this, because of course that could be taken to a pathological degree also too. But they would take it to such a degree sometimes that they would force themselves to sleep on hard floors and to whip oneself. I think we're beginning to see a lot of this emerging with like Wim Hof and his popularizing cold therapy. Like, cold is uncomfortable. Cold will expose you, and cold requires an aesthetic, stoic, strong attitude. And so things like that, make yourself uncomfortable so that you can transcend the weakness of the flesh and come into your right nature.
I love that. I love that way of looking at it. Elliott, for you, what if you were to be able to go back in time, if you can think back of your journey and everything you've done in your career, your life, business, the works, and you could go back to your younger days, so say between the ages of 1 and 7, and you could go and give yourself one message, you could give yourself one piece of life advice to move forwards into the future with, what would that one piece of advice be?
Well, the times that I doubted myself or I judged myself or was really hard on myself, and I think a lot of us do it, we take upon ourselves, like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get my shit together? What I'm going to say is not to make us feel like victims, but to put all that into right context and to realize that we're living in a fallen world where we've been poisoned, we've been led astray, and we've been severely conditioned in a wrong way through, like I said, the poisons that they begin injecting us with from the time we were born, to the medications, to the poisons in the food, to the education system that stamps out our true nature. And so, I had a lot of harsh judgments about myself. When I was a kid, they told me I had attention deficit disorder and put me on medication, and I didn't like myself. I felt that there was something wrong with me, and there was, but it wasn't my fault. Again, I don't say that to blame or to take that victim's position, but to see myself and to see oneself in the right way.
Well, Elliott, final question, my friend. What does it mean to you to be able to live a nourished life?
We're constantly looking for nourishment outside of ourselves. A lot of our desire for overconsumption comes from many traumas that we experienced when we were children, not getting even the nourishment that we needed from our mothers. We've got this very pathological relationship to the feminine, and a lot of it comes from the wounds that our mothers experienced that were passed on to us. Most of us never got the spiritual and the emotional nourishment from our mothers because they weren't there. And so this neediness for nourishment is actually, we're looking for it in the wrong place. And to move toward the world of the Father means that we're looking up for our nourishment. And the only place that that's going to come from is from God, is from looking above, is from looking to our eternal pattern. We can free ourselves from the bondage of the flesh and our neediness to fill those empties from that emptiness from our early traumas.
So, Elliott, where can people find you? Where can people see more of what you do?
I've been most vocal lately on my Instagram account, so you can go and look me up, Elliott Hulse, at Elliott Hulse on Instagram. And if you're interested in the topics that we discussed today, I would invite you to explore and consider going to one of my grounding camps, which is my contribution to the deep need for men to have an initiation. And, when I say initiation, I'm not initiating anybody. It's not about, the way it was done with our ancestors. What I'm offering is an initiation for each man onto his new life path, so we could be reborn again in our right way.
I just want to acknowledge you, for what you're doing and what you're putting out there is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I've been watching since I was in my teens, so 18, to where you are today, and it's just phenomenal to see how that's moved and transformed along with it. So, Elliott, I've loved having you on. I really appreciate the fact that you've come on the show, and it's been great to have you on and share your knowledge.
My pleasure, and thank you for doing the work that you do.
And there we have it. That is Elliott Hulse on the Nourish Life show. Such an inspiring guy. Absolutely love his content and what he's doing. Now, if you were tuning in today and you did take something away from the podcast, take a screenshot, let us know you're listening, tag me and Elliott in, and more to the point, if there's content in here which can go out and help other people, share the message and tag your friends in. Or just help us spread the word and leave a review and a star rating. But apart from that, guys, go and live a nourished life.
Ready to break the mold? Learn more about leading a nourished life by visiting the Nourish Group and Simon Hall on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter.